Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to go ahead and begin our final session of today. My name is Vincent Ash. I'm the Chief of Staff for the Indiana Economic Development Corporation. I first would like to thank Governor Holcomb and his staff for putting on this Hoosier Huddle event. I want to thank Butler University for allowing us to be here today. This last panel discussion is going to focus on improving quality of life throughout Indiana with a specific focus on the READI program. To my left, I have Brian Prince, who's the president and CEO of Prince Property Group, Heather Ennis, who's the president and CEO of the Northwest Indiana Forum, and my colleague, Mark Wasky, who is the SVP and Special Counsel to the Secretary of Commerce. Before we start our panel discussion, I'm going to go through a brief slides, and I will be less than 5 minutes, I promise, because I feel like you guys get more valuable information from our panel discussion that we'll have here today. And I promise I'll try to be as entertaining as Chris Lowry was in a prior session. So he is a gospel to workforce development and higher education. So the READI program was presented by the Indiana Economic Development Corporation. It was launched back in 2021. The IEDC's goal is just purpose is to grow the state's economy. We do that through a variety of different ways by investing into business attraction, expansion, entrepreneurship, energy transition, as well as marketing and communications. Today we're going to talk about the built environment and how that plays a role in economic development. Just a year in review of our 2023, it was our most successful year from the IEDC from a capital investment standpoint. We was able to attract $28.7 billion of new investment. That are new companies that are wanting to be here, and a lot of those companies actually pointed towards READI and our investment in quality of life as a reason why they wanted to relocate and expand here in Indiana. A little bit more about the READI program. Again, the READI program was launched in 2021. We have since launched our website, which is indianareadi.com, which is just highlights the variety of different projects that we have throughout the state, the projects that the regions are working on with dashboards, very interactive map, but it's definitely the storytelling aspect of how we're creating higher quality of life, quality of opportunity, and quality of place throughout the state. Just a little bit about READI 1. Again, launched in 2021. We awarded $500 million to 17 regions. Those 17 proposals created about $15 billion of potential projects. Overall, with the $500 million, we was able to leverage into $12 billion overall. All 92 counties participated in the program. We were able to fund about 361 projects total during READI 1. READI 2 is just a continued focus of READI 1 with a more concentrated focus on quality of life, quality of place, and quality of opportunity. You can kind of see the subcategories that we will have underneath there. Quality of place, which we'll definitely talk about a lot today, has a focus on housing, growth infrastructure, and mixed-use developments that all help lead towards additional capacity for housing throughout the state. READI 2 Awards was awarded back in April 11th and was awarded to 15 regions. There were some consolidations specifically in central Indiana. Here you can kind of see a breakdown of where those dollars of $500 million were granted to each regional entity. This is another further breakdown of kind of where dollars went in a combination of READI 1 and READI 2. As you can see, spread out throughout the state. As a component of READI 2.0, we were blessed and granted $250 million from the Lilly Endowment to focus on two key initiatives. One is the blight reduction and redevelopment program. This is just a focus on reducing blight as well as and vacant buildings throughout the state and redeveloping them into quality mixed-use developments. And then their arts and cultural initiative of about $65 million to invest in arts and culture planning, initiative, festivals, and long-term sustainability arts programs in general. So with that, we'll go ahead and kick off the panel. I first will want the panel to introduce themselves, who they are, and a little bit about their organization, and we'll start with Heather.
Thanks so much, Vincent. Heather Ennis, President and CEO of the Northwest Indiana Forum. We are the 7-county economic development organization. We cover Lake, Porter, LaPorte, Jasper, Newton, Pulaski, and Stark counties. So right up next to Chicago in the northwest corner of the state. Our job is to be the voice of Northwest Indiana business, to market the region as the place for business, so helping to attract investment and helping to grow investment in our region. And then we stake out and drive bold initiatives that wouldn't happen without an organization like the Forum. We are in charge of the Regional Economic Development Plan and have been the shepherds of this great READI project. So we really appreciate the partnership with the IEDC.
Awesome. Brian?
Absolutely. Can you guys hear me? I can hear myself. All right. Brian Prince, CEO and President of Prince Property Group. I spent the last 10 years with a fairly prominent national multifamily development firm here in the city, Flaherty & Collins. Recently, I've left Flaherty & Collins in February and started my own venture. But through that time that I spent there as a partner at that firm, developed over $400 million of mixed-use urban infill, primarily development. 99.9% of that development has all been public-private in nature. So, but for the participation from great folks like the state of Indiana, IEDC, local municipalities, these transformational projects don't happen around the state. So my background and kind of area of niche is really in that urban infill and the public-private component.
And Brian has been a part of projects all throughout the state, and that's from New Albany all the way up to the South Bend Elkhart region. Mark?
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Mark Wasky, Senior Vice President with the IEDC. Been with the organization, 9.5, almost 10 years. Actually joined when the former governor was pursuing our first iteration of a regional quality of place community development program, regional cities. Had the honor of working on that team, ultimately getting it stood up, and then thanks to the leadership of Governor Holcomb, we were able to parlay that into something even bigger and more impactful.
Awesome, thank you all. And I'm gonna hype Mark up a little bit, but Mark has definitely been instrumental to the Regional Cities program, the growth into READI, as well as a lot of other, subsidy programs that we do to invest into, actual redevelopment. So Mark, with that, would love to just kind of hear from you the history of why the investment into, quality of place, quality of life, the history of from going from regional cities and the impetus of that to really what READI is today, which is now, a billion-plus program.
Yeah, so going back almost, it feels like ancient history now, but in the early days of the Pence administration, he had asked the IEDC to take a hard look at what is the biggest threat to our long-term economic viability. Obviously, we have a fantastic business climate. Companies, people were investing steadily within the state, but we knew that there could be headwinds that we would have to confront at some point. So we were tasked with what is that and how do we solve for it. The first question was relatively easy. Just looking at the data, the state was really only growing its population through, natural growth. And when you looked at the migratory patterns, we were losing a significant number of people every year. So then we were tasked with, well, what do we do about it? And the organization spent the better part of a year and a half looking at different communities around the country and identifying what they have done to be the most successful and fastest growing communities in the country. And what came out of that was kind of 9 core principles. And that was, most notably is they thought regionally. They thought like a business thinks when, thinking about how we get people here, how do we grow our economy. They also had long-term plans that the entire region came together to develop. And it wasn't just the elected officials, a critical component of that, obviously, is our elected partners, but it was pulling in regular residents, key organizations within the community, whether that be the business community, philanthropic community, to plot out what they wanted to be in the next 10, 20, 30 years. And then they went after it. They pushed really hard to implement that and that focus on the overall vibrancy and quality of the communities. So that is really what led to regional cities and all of the success that our local partners have had here over the last couple of years.
Awesome. Thank you, Mark. That's a great story. Pose this question to you all. We'll start with Heather. A lot of times when we're courting businesses or they're looking to expand or even relocate to Indiana, they focus a lot on that, quality of life and quality of place as they make their decisions. What are some key elements that can contribute to creating a vibrant community, enhancing quality of place, and what strategies can a community implement to help achieve this?
Yeah, so I really feel like bringing everybody together and crafting that plan jointly, I think, economic development can happen to you, for you, or with you, right? So when the community gets together and really builds an economic development plan together, things run so much more smoothly. I think that it creates a synergy and a hope that couldn't be there without bringing all the voices to the table. And then it also reduces a lot of barriers to entry when everybody's on the same page with a zoning map and a use plan and what the community, from a overall, community development plan, from a strategic plan to an aspirational plan. All of those pieces are incumbent upon the communities coming together. I think from our perspective, the thing that was really successful for us is that we have 61 municipalities, 16 mayors, 20 plus economic development organizations. All of those people had different views of what this could look like for their community. But bringing all of those communities together to talk about what this looks like for a region was really invigorating and really exciting, and people that had never been at the table before felt inspired by just being part of the conversation. So creating that hope, creating that sense of belonging, and then really driving the impactful opportunities around that plan. So making sure that it's not just something that's going to sit on a shelf, but making sure that there's an implementation matrix to it, and that you then task folks to say, okay, you want to be part of this process, here's your part. It's not just our plan, it's all of our plans. So here's the role that each community member plays in it, and here's how together we're going to hold each other accountable. So I think that, keeping in mind implementation and accountability are critical components to that, and then really driving that bigger vision hope.
Awesome. Thanks, Heather. And I would say Heather and her team has definitely taken a very collaborative approach. And that's not just for show. You can feel it and sense it even when you're talking to her and some of her key stakeholders. And that has led them to receiving a top award in both READI 1 as well as READI 2. So kudos to you on all your hard work. Brian, same question. What are some key elements that can contribute to creating a vibrant community and some strategies that communities can implement?
No, absolutely. I think the number one thing that we typically start with is if we sit down with Fortune 500 companies or even, startup companies and businesses that are trying to compete for talent. I think one of the main initiatives that Regional Cities Initiative started with was trying to stop the brain drain that was occurring in Indiana, where we have our regional communities, your children grow up, they go to college, they leave the state to go live in these more attractive communities with more amenities, more options, walkability, things of that nature. So the Chicagos of the world, the Clevelands are getting bigger, even the Cincinnatis, Pittsburghs, and then the coast, right? So it was, how do we play and level the playing field? And Regional Cities was able to help with some of that. I think where you start, though, is with a mayor and an administration at the local level that has foresight and vision. And they are aggressive and they're risk takers, because you cannot be status quo. You will get left in the dust every time, thinking that organically things will just happen on their own. You just can't get there. So for starters, in Indiana, we want the same amenities. We want the attractive housing options that you see in the Chicagos and these other markets where the rental rates are very, very high, right? And so we can artificially create those rental rates to make the underwriting pencil from a construction standpoint. And so therefore you have to have what you call leveling tools, right, at the state and local level to allow for a project to come online and reduce that risk from a developer perspective who's going to risk their capital to put something out there. Well, now you have mayors who are aggressive, states who are aggressive, and companies who are now able to come to a place that has an attractive housing option that allows them to compete for talent. And now as we keep that talent in our regional cities, because our regionals are attractive, not just Indianapolis, right? And so when you bring that whole ecosystem together, it becomes a vibrant place. And Mishawaka is a great story. Elkhart's a great story. Our Michigan cities of the world are great stories all around. Evansville, Southern Indiana. But some of these communities started and it was literally a sleepy community, a sleepy town. But someone had foresight to be aggressive and then get help from the state to incentivize these developments. And now these are booming, bustling communities around the state of Indiana.
Awesome. Appreciate that, Brian. Mark, same question to you. What are some key elements that can contribute to a vibrant community and some strategies that could be implemented?
Yeah, I mean, not to, I guess, repeat everything that Heather and Brian had mentioned, but I'd say the reason why where I sit, READI has been so successful and there's so much momentum and excitement around it is because through partnerships with our private sector, with our regional partners and local communities, we're finding ways to get projects done where without that engagement at the state, local, and private level, as Brian said, likely wouldn't happen in Indiana and would go somewhere else where it's less risky or higher opportunity for profitability. So I'd say two key things in terms of strategies, because obviously housing is very important, but there are those other things that make a community the community, and a vibrant community that people get excited about and gets talked about, and they're proud to say, I live here. And some of that is, those parks and trails and art and other things like that again make people excited to want to be there, and identifying potential partners, coming to the table and say, what role do each of us play? Some of it may be a funding partner, some of it may be organizational leadership and implementation, but really thinking through what lane each of us swim in, and not trying to, I guess, have everybody be the chief. And again, I'd say, thanks to all of you in the room, we have been able to do something that no other state in the country is doing currently, with $1 billion being made available that we anticipate, by the end of it, resulting in close to $20+ billion in total community and housing and other investments here in the coming years.
Awesome, thanks, Mark. I'm glad you mentioned parks. Just a little statistics. READI 1 funds, the $500 million, about 30% of that actually went towards parks and trails, especially in Indiana, like when we lack, beachfront access or mountains for that example. Investments in those parks and trails amenities are critical. And I see a lot of familiar faces in the room, so I appreciate everybody's hard work that have worked on the READI program. These last few years, there were growing pains for sure. But to Mark's point, we're the only state in the country that is investing at this level of scale into quality of place and quality of life. So I know there's a lot of questions, even though Heather had that. Can we benchmark against anybody? And the answer is no, because there's no other state that's doing it at this scale.
We were all building the plane as we were flying.
Absolutely, absolutely. But was able to get a lot of successful and great projects out of it. Brian, you mentioned a little bit earlier, started talking about the market conditions right now and how it's getting tougher and tougher with inflation, high interest rates for projects to pencil. And then you have communities that haven't had new construction in years or decades for that matter, and there's not necessarily any comps that banks are kind of looking at or can compare to. Can you talk about the importance, one, of public-private partnerships, but also the importance of programs like READI or the redevelopment tax credit that we have here in Indiana that really helps move the needle to help drive projects forward?
You know, I can tell you that I've been, as a developer, spoiled in Indiana in that you expect these things when you go to another state and they don't have these programs. Like, what are you talking about? What do you mean you don't have redevelopment, tax credits? Or what do you mean you don't have these programs? Indiana is doing this and out punching you guys all over the place. I'm going to go home. We're just going to do developments, in Indiana. But I can tell you this is an amazing program, an amazing tool that allows you to level the playing field, as I said earlier. What makes it so important is that but for these types of programs, we would really only see growth in our major cities in Indiana, which would be the Indianapolis of the world. Because if you're a business, you're going to say, that's the biggest talent pool, so I want to orient myself around that orbit in the Indianapolis. But when the state is able to step in, you breathe life into these additional communities, our regional communities around the state. And there's so many spinoffs even from the regional community, right? So you've got a bigger Notre Dame South Bend, but then you've got Mishawaka, right next door. You've got your Goshens, your Plymouths, your Elkharts, that all have their own identity. But it's how do we, as a smaller city that's not Indianapolis, over 1 million people in the MSA, and how do we get those same types of transformational projects in our community? And so as a developer like myself, I typically try to target our more regional tertiary communities off of a bigger major hub because many of the developers overlook those communities. They say, I can't make my numbers work in that city, so why am I even going to go monkey around with it? Whereas I come in and say, hey, how can I help you? What is it that you're looking to accomplish? What type of product are you trying to put here, whether it be affordable housing, workforce, market rate? You have all the demands, and most communities need it all, right? They don't need just one thing. And having the tools from the redevelopment tax credit, for one, that is just another tool in the belt, just like the READI program. READI is more broad and can be applied across many different subsets, right, of what the funding is for. And the redevelopment tax credit obviously was spearheaded initially from the industrial recovery tax credit that we had as a state to revitalize blight in our older industrial buildings, but then morphed when they saw the need that those were getting harder to bring to the table, the large industrial warehouse buildings. And so I give kudos to the state as always being on the forefront to how do we morph, how do we change something to be more impactful and reach more of these communities and give more opportunities for development. And I think just hitting on it again, our leadership at our state level has just been tremendous with thinking through that regardless of what your political affiliation is, this state is kicking butt. Right, they are kicking butt left and right, getting things done. And as a developer in this state, very fortunate to be able to work with great folks like yourselves and these great municipalities around the state as well.
And Vincent, if I could, I guess, just quickly jump in and touch on something that Brian had mentioned. The investment will go to where the people are. And we're hearing that more and more as we work with businesses trying to bring them to Indiana, support their growth if they're here already. And that's from your entrepreneur, small business, all the way up to your large Fortune 500 companies. They all ask the same question, where am I going to find a workforce? Yep. And that was really what drove this as the question that gets posed almost from the outset when we engage is, where can I find the people and what are you doing to invest in yourselves? Because we want to invest in places that are doing things to make themselves better and more attractive. And the success that the state has had, our local partners have had over the last 2.5, 3 years in seeing unprecedented levels of business development investment alongside our community investments, I think is a testament to that.
And then really to that end, the population growth that we're seeing along with it is astounding too. Business loves to go where people go, and it also loves to go where the barriers to entry are knocked down for them, or there's a team that can help, navigate the way for them. And so I really feel like the secret sauce that we have in the Hoosier hospitality is that we do work together. We are trying to bring the workforce people together to the table. We are, the communities, we've got LaPorte here in the house today, the community that they're creating there with the quality of place and quality of life initiatives that they have underway. And then they all work together, the mayor's office, the economic developer, workforce, all of them working together to help not only do the plans and the programs that the state has set forth, but then to really enhance that and reduce the barrier to entry. So I feel like we're firing on all cylinders, whereas maybe previously, before we started doing these quality of place initiatives, we were firing on great tax climate. But the regional cities and then 2 rounds of READI have really put the gasoline in the tank to drive the communities to really say, okay, we've got real opportunity here. We're going to continue to advance the game.
Absolutely. That's a great point. Thank you for that, Heather. Mark, I kind of have a follow-up question from Brian's conversation about and discussion about the subsidy programs like redevelopment tax credits as well as READI. Could you talk about the strategy to utilizing those funds to really create a market in, I would say, communities that don't necessarily have comps? We've talked to a consultant a couple weeks ago who said, the market's strong now because we've invested in a few projects there. So could you talk about really the strategy to invest in some of this secondary, tertiary markets and utilizing those subsidy funds to kind of create that, whereas areas such as, Indianapolis or Central Indiana is not as needed as much as some of the others?
Absolutely, and I guess I'll start by saying, thanks to leadership from the governor, the support of the legislature, we do have READI, obviously, but beyond that, a set of very flexible tools that we were able to bring together and stack on top of one another, and I just highlight that because, as you had pointed out, Vincent, there are some markets that hadn't ever seen a large-scale multifamily development, for example. And to get developers interested in those communities, we often have to pull a bunch of different levers, bring a couple of different tools to the table to make it attractive to the private market to take that risk and to have the deal be structured where they can make money at the end of the day. But as you had pointed out, we have seen in a number of communities where we've been able to get the ball rolling on a couple of projects. We still often do have to support the projects financially, but it can be less support needed, or potentially more creative as well, because we have been thinking about how do we make some of this effort more sustainable, and we can't always rely on getting $500 million from the General Assembly every couple of years. So we have been thinking through continued support, but also maybe in a way that allows us to come alongside more projects and hopefully have an even bigger impact than $1 billion.
So to kind of piggyback on the topic you're discussing, we're going to use Elkhart as an example. 2017, we had a project on the riverfront in downtown Elkhart, Indiana, former foundry site. City had torn the facility down. Obviously, it was a safety hazard, for a number of folks there, vagrants in and out of the building. And that community, if you're going to come in, Elkhart had, let's back up. Elkhart had, I think, almost 20,000 people a day in Elkhart County that would commute into Elkhart County for work, but did not live in Elkhart County. That's astonishing. They're leaving because there was nothing there for them as an attractive housing option or, entertainment, amenity, things like that. And so we say to ourselves, we can build 200 units and capture a percentage of that 20,000 people that are commuting in and out of there. Our issue was trying to get a lender to support the project from an underwriting perspective, because the highest rents in the market were a 30-year-old product called York Woods, which is around the corner from the site, and they were getting ballpark 99 cents to $1 a square foot. And so when you go to a lender and you say, okay, well, we're looking to make this thing pencil to underwrite, that project probably needed $1.50 some odd, a foot. And that's not happening. The appraiser comes in, the appraiser says, well, here's your comp. We think you're maybe 15, 20 cents, a foot higher than existing product. They just can't make that leap, 50 cents a foot higher than existing product. And so you have what's called an economic gap. Your shortfall there is more equity from the developer is required to get that project built. You may or may not hit the $1.50 mark that you think is achievable. You are hamstrung by what the bank and the appraiser tells you they're willing to underwrite. And that's where a developer says, well, why would I put that extra money in there at risk when I can go to another market where the rents are higher, my costs are the same, I'm going to get a better economic return. Hence, the state steps in with these various tools in this program to help mitigate and lower that risk from the development community to now allow these regional cities to compete for these similar products in their communities.
And just to jump in, and Brian, you just sparked something that I probably should have mentioned, Vincent, with one of your first questions around strategies that we can look at, and something that we've been thinking, being more thoughtful about as it relates to our business development work, and trying to align investments in communities alongside investments that are happening from our business partners, is to look at, I guess, how we can leverage a housing development in proximity to the riverfront park development, in proximity to other amenities to make an even greater impact, make that project more attractive, but have a broader impact where it's not just the housing development or just the park. It's the housing, the park, the trail that connects it into downtown where there's restaurants and entertainment. So if there is a strategy that I should have mentioned, it's think about how one investment can spur additional investment or placing in a place that would be able to leverage those other amenities.
Awesome. So, Heather, to that point, I wanted to bring it to you. Could you talk about the benefits that READI has made in your community, highlighting possibly even some key projects that have been very successful in Northwest Indiana due to the READI program?
Sure. So, READI has really brought hope and inspiration to our region. And it's kind of funny because we did it maybe a little bit differently than other people did it, and we came in with our projects for the first round of READI. We had a full list of projects and a pretty tight list that adhered to the. I think we asked for 52 million, and we got 50 million. So we knew what projects we were going to fund, but it solidified the opportunity for the region, and everybody started to notice, and everybody started to get hope around it. So it's created an opportunity and optimism that's really palpable in our region, and it's fun, and people are excited about the direction that things are going. So we've done 38 projects actually through this first round of READI. The $50 million is over $700 million of investment across our region. So 13 projects, READI 2 is just brick and mortar. And so we did some programmatic projects that I'm really excited about and really thrilled that we did, because workforce is a critical issue. And so we did 13 projects around talent and workforce, and really using funds to bring people up to being more career ready, to being employable, to help attract talent to the region. So I'm really, really excited about those projects. 13 projects around placemaking and infrastructure, really driving opportunity for quality of place and quality of investment that wouldn't have happened otherwise. 10 projects on evolving our economy. So we're 25% of the nation's steel is made in Northwest Indiana. We're really fortunate to have a great steel industry, great petroleum industry, refining. We're, very industrial market, but to continue to evolve that economy and continue to look at what's next and how do we drive that was critically important to us. And so, we had 10 projects really focused on entrepreneurship, innovation, and evolving our economy. And then 2 projects really on telling our story better, telling our story louder and prouder, because we all know that we tend to be a little bit humble as Hoosiers, and we tend to be a little bit more reserved and aw shucks, but we have a lot of great things going here. And when we talk to companies and we talk to businesses, the difference maker is that we are all working in concert together, and that we do have these innovative tools and creative opportunities to continue to drive our economy. I mean, we've seen it in year after year after year of record investment for our state. So it's pretty exciting. So some of the projects from a programmatic perspective, one of the projects that I'm really excited about is the Level Up program, running it through the United Way, working with the working poor, essentially, that people that are making enough money that if they got their they don't get WIC or they don't get subsidies from the state government, but they just don't make enough money to make ends meet. Well, we're driving change for those families, and we are meeting them where they're at and getting them with career navigators and helping them to get that credential or that education that can move them to that next level. Well, actually, sometimes leapfrogging levels. We've seen 16 people go into homeownership through this program. We've seen there's 250 people that are in the program going through getting degrees and credentials and advancing their quality of life. So really, really exciting things that are driving meaningful difference for generations to come for those families. A project that landed on the cutting room floor quite a few times and was a small dollar project for us was the reimagining of the Michigan City Prison. Without that project, the Michigan City Prison doesn't get moved into the Westville Correctional Facility, and 100 acres is going to open up in the middle of Michigan City for opportunity of redevelopment. I mean, so sometimes it's the small projects that tip the scale and really create a dynamic change for the community, and sometimes it's, investing $10 million in the Tulliston Opportunity Campus in the city of Gary, where really creating things that are driving dramatic change in that community. Or sometimes it's investing, $3 million in fiber, and where we're lighting up Northwest Indiana in quantum capacity to evolve our economy. So the range is broad. 38 projects is too many to handle. So we'll have fewer in round 2, I think. But I've got a great team behind me, and they haven't shot me yet. So we're excited about the opportunity from round 2 too.
I think one of the things that I failed to mention and touch on as we talk about the talent attraction and retention components of these investments at the state level. So some things that were some shocking information that I didn't even think we expected in some of our developments was that Mishawaka, Indiana, for one, we go and we look at where are these people coming from, right? We're building these mixed-use developments, but to piggyback on what Mark said, IEDC is not investing in greenfield, cornfield, 300, 400 unit apartment complexes. That's not transformational. It is truly the placemaking. How do you put that urban infill development around a trail, around a riverfront, near walkability, retail, restaurants, dining, et cetera? However, we say what is this new development going to do for the state, not just local? And so in Mishawaka even, which is not so far west, close to the border, Mishawaka had over 30% of the 230 unit, residents living there. Over 30% came from outside of Indiana. 80% came from outside of the city. Well, then fast forward, state is forward thinking again, investing a ton of money in Northwest Indiana in the double track, right? And that whole goal there is attraction, not necessarily retention, but attraction. How do we steal from other states who are dropping the ball and show that we can dribble? And so in that situation, we've got a project going up in Michigan City right now that's over $100 million. State stepped up big time on that project there with a huge investment, and we know that that's going to be extremely fruitful in the attraction from Illinois to bring people who work in Chicago over to the Indiana side of the border where the cost of living is much more affordable.
Awesome. No, great examples of some projects that are going on through the state. We have a few more minutes, and Mark, I'm going to ask you a pretty loaded question. So we have, so there's going to be multiple questions within this. So, because I want you to be able to tackle all of them. But back in April, the IDC allocated READI 2 funds. Where are we at in that process, as well as could you talk a little bit more about the goals for the endowment funds to focus on blight reduction as well as arts and culture?
Absolutely. So immediately after the announcement in April, our team started to meet with all 15 regions, sit down, talk about the overall evaluation of the plan, how we landed where we did, and then begin discussions about specific projects. We didn't want to waste any time or slow anything down, knowing that going back to 1.0 in the spring of 21, we had $1.5 billion of projects submitted in those plans. So we knew that the demand was there. And while we wanted to be thoughtful and strategic about how we would deploy the funds into projects, we, again, didn't want to take our foot off the gas because the competition for people is only becoming more and more fierce, and it's not just between other states in the Midwest, it's all around the country and really around the world. So our team has wrapped that up. Expect to get all of the agreements signed here in the next week or two, and we'll hit the road with hopefully some project announcements beginning next month and then all the way through the end of the year. With the LEI funds, those are really, that's a really exciting opportunity for us. One, just because it creates another, round of funding opportunities for us, but with the challenges associated with blighted and vacant properties, whether it be, industrial facilities or even, a block of vacant homes, that has serious impacts on the surrounding property values. With that, the revenues available to the local community. So we really wanted to focus a significant portion of that on addressing those issues, and then make, I think, one of the largest investments the state will have ever made in arts and cultural initiatives across the state, whether that be public art, trying to provide opportunities for architecturally significant developments, so it's reflecting the image and quality of the communities that we really want to create, but also supporting other organizations, whether it be the local Philharmonic Orchestra or performing groups and the like. But one key component that I really want to touch on, because this was very important for both us and our partners at the endowment, is about 15 million of the 250 that we had received is dedicated to providing technical assistance, training, and capacity building for our regional partners and individuals within those communities, providing hopefully a deeper bench of potential talent that could head into development in Indiana or to go to work for Heather's organizations or for our cities and towns across the state with the knowledge and expertise to be able to figure out how to make these challenging projects a reality.
Awesome. Thank you, Mark. As we get ready to wrap up, we have about a minute left, so I'm going to ask a very rapid-fire question to all three of you all. But I'm about to ask you to pick your favorite child, which you probably don't do. And I'll start first to give you guys some time to think about it. But what has been one of the favorite READI projects or redevelopment projects you have seen in the state of Indiana, or a visionary project that you have seen elsewhere that you would like to? I'll start and say the Sellersburg Family Scholar House, which is an affordable housing project in partnership with Ivy Tech, provides wraparound services for single mothers that includes childcare, and allowing them to be able to attend Ivy Tech to get training and get more credentials to obtain a better job. So to me, that was an excellent example of a good partnership with a higher education institution that doesn't have housing but owns the land, and an affordable housing developer that wanted to provide a very intentional project for the community. And if you ask me in a year, hopefully there's my favorite projects in Huntington, Indiana. I see Mayor Strict over there, who I know is working on a lot of stuff. So with that, we'll go down the road. We'll start with Mark and end with Brian. But a few sentences, favorite project or visionary project that you've seen elsewhere that you would like to bring.
Oof, there are too many. And I guess piggyback on you, Vincent, I saw Mayor Marsh earlier. It was not the largest project, but one that really met a unique need within the community, is their inclusive playground and park for individuals with learning disabilities, autism, provides them a place that they can go and have a safe place to play.
Awesome. Heather?
You truly are like making me pick between my children here, because these are projects that have lived and breathed through the regional plan. So I think that the projects themselves are not what inspires me so much. It's the byproduct of the projects. Awesome. And the hope and the drive that I see happening in these communities from the investment that's been made by the state is, again, it's a tidal wave of opportunity that's happening. Our tagline is greater opportunities, go NWI, greater opportunities in Northwest Indiana. And I really feel like all of this working together is rising the tide.
I'm usually not this talkative, but I just wanted to mention something, and it came out of another region. But the comment was, if you're not proud of where you live and willing to talk about it, no one will want to be there. So I think that is an excellent way to put it, because we are hopefully across the state driving that sentiment.
Brian?
I think that's a tough question to pick a favorite one when you've been involved in different regions and many different projects. I think at the end of the day, it's the joy that I receive is coming in and taking a site that is neglected, underserved, armpit that somebody may have thought, of the city, and then to see the back end product come to fruition. And it's a place where if you didn't know the history of the site, you'd never know that site might have had a negative connotation. And that is true change in a community. When someone can come there, has no idea of the history, it doesn't matter. It is now what used to be an armpit, a place where people gather and want to be, and others from outside the community come to enjoy that area as well. And none of those things happen without a collaborative effort between local and state.
Awesome. Okay, everybody give our panelists a round of applause.